out there today, which I think has most accurately been described in terms of a hybrid threat, one that is both conventional and irregular at the same time. It's not either or. You know, we have a discussion about whether the threat is irregular and requires irregular forces, or the threat is conventional. And I think that distinction is not terribly useful, because it tends to make us see the world and force structure to deal with that world in black and white terms, and that is not in fact the case. And in the Marine Corps, we very firmly believe that we need to be trained across the spectrum of warfare, because the one thing that we do know about the next war and about the next threat is that we're going to get it wrong. And I mean, history has shown that regardless of who the theologians are that are in power, we are going to get that wrong. So if you know that, what you want to do is get it the least wrong of anybody, of any of the options. And the way to do that is to hedge your bets. It's not to put it all in low interest, high risk loans. Oh my God. It's to actually kind of keep a portfolio across the spectrum of conflict here. So we think that's where we're going, and that's what the Marine Corps is going to do in addressing the next QDR. We are going to look to build a balanced force, balanced between conventional and irregular capability, and balanced to look at this hybrid threat, if you will. If you want an example of what a hybrid threat looks like, it could look like a lot of things. It could look like a conventional land fight somewhere. It could look an awful lot like the Hezbollah in Lebanon. If you look back in history, you'll find that there are very few instances where you can say this fight was exactly, this war was all on the low-end side or all on the high-end side. Even if you look at things that appear on the surface to be very much a conventional conflict. Hitler's invasion of Russia, which appeared for all the world to be like a conventional force-on-force conflict, you know, in the Kursk pocket there with the 6th Army and Paulus and Stalingrad and the whole bit. In fact, as the Germans went through Russia, behind them, they rolled up in part because of the kinder, gentler approach they took with all the Ukrainians. They had a raging counterinsurgency going on behind them the whole way into Russia. And very little has been written about the effect that counterinsurgency had on their ability to execute conventional operations. It was not necessarily coordinated by the Russians, but in fact it was extraordinarily effective. So when we talk about hybrid conflicts, we're not just talking about the use of high technology by low technology kinds of folks. We are talking about the use of what we would consider today to be conventional tactics and irregular tactics that are together in some form. So again, that's kind of where we're focused right now in the Marine Corps, on that kind of threat. The other thing that QDRs tend to look at and generally give up in frustration is acquisition reform. You know, everything that we do in the Department of Defense ultimately gets down to kind of buying stuff. Okay, I mean, at the end of the day, we do train and equip Marines. We do put Marines out there. We in the Marine Corps like to think that we are focused on the people, on the Marines that are down there. We are a very manpower-intensive force. We're a very young force, and young age-wise. 65% of the Marine Corps is on its first 4-year enlistment. I mean, we are a very young force. But the technology and what it takes to do that, to get those kinds of systems out, is quite frankly something that I think we ought to take a look at. And I think if you look at this a little deeper, you'll find that some of the problems that we have with fielding programs and getting programs through the acquisition process actually have an effect on our ability on policy. Because if you start to design a weapon system and it takes you 20 years to get it out the door because it goes through numerous breaches and it has cost overruns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you're actually beginning to field something that may have been designed for a threat, oh my God, that existed before the Iron Curtain fell. I mean, it's not inconceivable. There's things out there today that probably better address that threat than they do some of the stuff that's out there now. The whole of government approach we talked about before, and the last piece that I'll just leave you with is kind of an overarching thing to think about, is the notion of energy, and the climate change piece is a big part of it. We are doing some studies inside the Marine Corps about how the oceans are rising, and as you know, the Marine Corps tends to find itself in places that are islands. and places that have sort of low water levels. So that is a concern of ours over the years. Is it going to happen tomorrow? No, it's not. But it's some of these places it's going to happen 50, 60, 70, 80 years down the road, 100 years down the road. What does that do for the cost, for the investment we make in infrastructure, et cetera, et cetera? The piece about energy, though, is probably as or more important in terms of the energy on the battlefield. I mean, there's good operational reasons to have vehicles on the battlefield that are not fueled by fossil fuel. I mean, there's just good reasons to be more green, good operational, tactical reasons, especially when you talk about a force like the Marine Corps that is expeditionary and likes to sustain itself ashore. The more we can sustain ourselves in terms of energy, the better off we think we're going to be, and the more value we think we're going to bring to the nation. So that's just my quick 10 minutes in time here, a snapshot of kind of where I think the QDR could potentially look here in an overarching standpoint, and just a couple of bullets about where the Marine Corps is going to focus its efforts on. Thanks.